Yeah, hi, I'm Malcolm Howitt. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Director at Axiell in the UK. I'm here with my colleague Nikita Ostrovsky, who's one of our data scientists, and we're talking about work we're doing with AI entity linking. I just want to set the scene before Nick starts his presentation. So part of the challenge around the use of AI is cataloging collections is a never-ending task. I'm sure you understand that. But if you can't catalog effectively, then you can't really preserve or discover collections effectively. It's a big data problem, really. And there's never enough staff resource to do this collections management fully. And also, people discover collections using their own language and not those used by professional curators and archivists. So we're trying to understand that we need to catalog efficiently and effectively, but give people the opportunity to discover collections in a way that works best for them. So that's part of the challenge. Part of the solution, well, within Axiell, we've always tried to use technology to make our customers and their users' lives easier. And we've been assessing the use of AI for quite a while now, looking at large language models and essentially taking language A and turning it into language B. Now, in 2022, we started to move through an innovation cycle using these large language models. And this work was driven originally by Dave Thomas, who was the CTO at Axiell at the time. He's now a consultant for us, but this project started that he worked with alongside the work that Nick did as well. And it was very much about taking unstructured text, of which we know we have a lot of it, and turning that into the language of curatorial metadata. Or conversely, curatorial metadata, and turn that into a language that's easy for non-professional staff to understand. So what AI can do is take that simple, repetitive work out of cataloging and free up your time to work on things that utilize your skills more. It's not replacing people, it's finding ways of using your time more effectively and let AI take responsibility for some of that data curation. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Nick to talk about the work we've been doing in the last 18 months around LLM and AI.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. So I'd like to start with a question. What do the National Museum of the Royal Navy, the Imperial War Museum, and the British Film Institute have in common? Here's an answer you might not expect. The Freemasons. Now, before you start wondering how you ended up at the conspiracy convention instead of the Heritage and Museums show, let me explain. In 1805, a Joseph Cheetham was awarded a certificate as Master Mason of the Calpian Lodge, a Freemason lodge in Gibraltar. Today, that certificate is kept in the archives of the NMRN. 100 years later, a carpenter was interviewed about how his position in the Freemasons helped advance his career in the Navy. And today that recording is kept at the Imperial War Museum. 100 years later still, the Masons crop up once more, opening a novelty store selling merchandise. And they are mentioned on an episode of Have I Got News for You, which is recorded for posterity and kept at the British Film Institute. Connections like this occur all over the place in the archives of our heritage institutions, but normally we don't know that they're there because the subjects of our archival records are not explicit. Take, for instance, the certificate from the NMRN. There are all sorts of interesting subjects in this object description at the bottom, but you wouldn't know that they're there without reading the description. Since this is impossible to do for the full archive, you or visitors are likely to miss important material that they would have found interesting. Museum professionals spend considerable effort trying to structure and index their archives based around the people, places, organizations, the themes that might be of interest to their visitors. And this allows people to browse by the subjects in the collections rather than particular objects, which is useful because I'm more likely to be interested in the Freemasons in general, say, than in a particular Freemason certificate. However, if you've got 100,000 objects or a million TV shows, Doing this for the full collection quickly becomes infeasible. If it takes you a minute to catalog a single record, it would take you 1,500 hours to index a medium to large size collection. And even if you know exactly what's in one collection, you still have the problem of reconciling this across collections, across different institutions. For instance, if I know that I have Masons in one collection, I don't necessarily know that that's the same as what's meant by a Mason in another collection. With the advent of large language models threatening to inundate the internet with fake news, it has never been more important to give heritage institutions the tools to make their carefully curated collections accessible to the public. And a problem of this scale requires new solutions, but we think that AI can be part of that. Artificial intelligence is the use of computers to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. One of the ways of doing this is through machine learning, which uses computers identifying many examples of a task. So for instance, you have many examples of a task and you take the input and the output for that task. This allows the computer to infer the rules that compute the correct output for any given input. I think there's often a misconception or a confusion between artificial intelligence and machine learning. So to be clear, all machine learning systems are AI, but not all AI systems use machine learning. I want to talk about how we've used machine learning to help organize museum collections. To start with, we take unstructured text from an archive catalog. So this is the description that we saw earlier. What we want is to pick out the subjects in this archive, in the archive catalog. But explicitly specifying the rules to do this is challenging. So we use machine learning, a model called named entity recognition, which has been trained on thousands of examples of text with the keywords picked out of that text. This teaches the model to do this automatically. And so when we pass in our archival description, it identifies the key subjects in this text, much as a curator would do or an archivist would do when structuring their archive for the consumption of the public. But we still have this problem of lacking context for our keywords. So does the Mason refer to a Freemason or a brick Mason, for instance? What we want is a way to universally identify each of these keywords, to identify what real-world entity the keyword Mason refers to, ideally in a way that's universal across all collections. Wikidata gives us a way to do this. Wikidata is the largest open source knowledge base in the world with over 100 million entities. It aims to give a unique identifier to everything in the world. So the Freemasons get one unique identifier and the brick Mason gets another. However, figuring out which real-world entity is referred to by a keyword like Mason is no simple task. Even ChatGPT, the large language model trained by OpenAI for $100 million, struggles with this. If you ask it what the ID for the Freemasons is, it will give you a plausible answer. But when you look that up, it's a fish market in rural Germany. So we trained a specific model, trained specifically for this task, to identify entities in Wikidata based on a keyword and the context that it's in. So given this keyword description, it will take you exactly to the best match, which is Freemasonry in Wikidata. This solves the problem of context because each Wikidata page comes with information about the real-world entity. So here we find out that it's an instance of a human social group and so on. And it gives us this unique identifier that can be used across all collections. It's a nice idea, but does it actually work? Well, in the last 6 months, we've been running a closed beta with five European heritage institutions, the BFI, IWM, and NMRN, which I've already mentioned, and 2 more, the New Institute, which is an architecture museum in the Netherlands, and South Tyrol, which is a German-Italian film archive. This has allowed us to trial these tools in a variety of domains to make sure that they work no matter where this content is coming from, and also allowed us to experiment with new techniques to do the same entity linking task in German and Dutch, where the tools are not as well developed. For simplicity, I'll just focus on the English institutions here. We ran our tools for 36 hours on data from each of these three institutions: subtitles from the BFI, descriptions of audio recordings from the Imperial War Museum, and object descriptions from the NMRN. Now, before I give you the stats, think about how long this would take you. Reading the text, identifying the entities, searching each one in Wikidata, picking out the correct candidate, inserting this back into the collections management system. If I do this, it takes me about 2 minutes per entity, and that's without inserting it back into the CMS. Our tools found 53,000 entities in the 36 hours that we ran them. That's about 2 seconds per entity, making these tools 10 to 100 times faster than a human. And we were running this on low performance hardware, so this could increase by another order of magnitude if you put it on higher performing servers. To make sure that these tools were performing as expected, we asked our partner institutions to evaluate this with their domain experts. So there were 2 separate tasks: one to evaluate this first named entity recognition part, which picks out the keywords in the text, and another to pick out to evaluate the entity linking. They found that the false positive rate for the named entity recognition task was about 2.5%, which means that 97 in every 100 entities extracted were correct. When you consider that even humans, especially overworked ones, can make mistakes, this is basically human-level performance. The entity linking task is harder because there's a lot of tacit knowledge that goes into identifying real-world entities based on a keyword. And there's also the problem that not every entity that we find in our archive exists in Wikidata. For instance, Joseph Cheetham, the Freemason from the NMRN that I mentioned earlier, doesn't exist in Wikidata at all. Most of us don't. Because the entity linking model that we used is trained to always give the best match for any given keyword, if the entity doesn't exist in Wikidata, it will give an incorrect result every single time. So out of the box, our entity linking model had an accuracy of about 50%, which is okay, but not the sort of performance that you'd want to unleash on an archive catalog. However, we can do one better, because these models also compute a confidence score in every entity that they link. And this is in fact one of the things that makes machine learning models useful and particularly unique compared to traditional computing, which doesn't compute these sorts of confidence scores. This histogram shows the entities labeled as a function of the confidence score. So here on the left, we have entities that were labeled incorrect, or actually, let me take a step back. In this plot, the entities labeled in red were incorrectly linked, and the entities labeled in blue are correctly linked. And what we can see is that in the region of low confidence on the left, the majority of entities are incorrectly linked, while in the regions of high confidence on the right, the majority are correctly linked. This means that we can use this confidence score that the model computes itself to predict which entities are correct. And this allows us to predict with actually almost 99% precision which entities are correctly linked. So you know, based on this model confidence score, which entities are correct. The confidence score is also useful when it comes to writing entities back to your archival collection. Suppose you have some distribution of entities, each one with its own confidence score. You can use the confidence score to decide which ones to discard. So say you have entities lower than 40%, you automatically discard those. Those with intermediate confidence, you might evaluate using human time, and optionally write back those entities with very high confidence automatically. Of course, it's up to every institution to decide where these thresholds fall for themselves. And this highlights one of the key findings of this work. These AI entity linking tools aren't replacing human curators. We still need archivists and museum collections managers to evaluate the performance of these tools and decide which entities to keep and which to discard. These are nuanced decisions that these tools can't do by themselves. Of course, finding entities isn't particularly useful unless you can put them back into the collections management system in a safe, robust, and transparent way. So we spent 2 of our 4 project iterations working on the business rules and the write-back scripts to reinsert these entities back into the collections management system. It's also important to track which metadata is AI generated. So every entity that we inserted back into the collections management system came with a note about when it was extracted and what the model confidence was. The primary function of these tools then is to scale up the abilities of human museum professionals. If before a human curator or archivist could get through 100 records in a day to catalog them, now they might be able to tackle a few thousand or tens of thousands. It also lets us find new connections across collections. The reason that I knew that the Freemasons were in all 3 of the English institutions is because they were identified in the same structured way across all collections. This is a snapshot of some of the other entities that the English institutions had in common. This allows visitors to browse by the subjects that they're interested in, rather than being limited by which institution they happen to be looking at or which institution happens to hold a particular object. Longer term, how am I doing for time? Longer term, I'm excited by the possibility to use these tools to enrich the knowledge in the public domain. For instance, if we find an entity in a museum catalog, we could automatically update its corresponding Wikidata page to inform visitors that relevant material is held at the museum in question. So you could automatically update the Freemasons page to let visitors know that documentation files or corresponding objects are held at the National Museum of the Royal Navy. And conversely, if an entity is found in a museum catalog that doesn't exist in Wikidata, like Joseph Cheetham from the NMRN, you can automatically create an entity in Wikidata, enriching the public knowledge base for the public and for other heritage institutions. And one thing that's worth mentioning is that the tools that we're using throughout all of this are open source. So all of the machine learning models that we're using are open source, and this gives you control over your own data. It means that you can run these models in your own systems or in Axiell systems where you trust your data to be secure, rather than sending them off to some institution, some company that is known for harvesting other people's information for a profit. Artificial intelligence is starting to cause problems, but we think that used in the right way, it can empower heritage institutions to be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I just want to finish off by talking about a couple of things that we are mindful of. One is the ethics of using AI. We've deliberately designed these tools to augment the work of curators, and it's used under their guidance primarily, so the data is not subject to those hallucinations and bias risks that people sometimes associate with these AI tools. And we're also acutely conscious of the overall ethics of using AI. It's customer data that's being managed here. There's a legal compliance, and security is at heart of all this product engineering that we're doing. And it's all about creating value for the customer, but managing the risk associated. We are mindful of, obviously, of the recent EU's AI Act, managing high risk and prohibited practices. This is very limited, low risk stuff we're doing here. But we're using AI to augment the work of practitioners. And it's very much a collaborative approach to this AI development, but also very much with a human oversight to the process as well. So clear governance, transparency, fair commercial and benefit is very much driving what we're trying to do here. In terms of our next stage, we're productizing the work that Nick's explained to you. So we're building collections management features around this entity extraction service. So the user of the system can select and submit data to that extraction service. That user validation stage that Nick talked about to verify samples of extracted data and links and then selected data is written back to associated records and marked as AI-generated data. So what Nick's explained there as part of the closed beta will now translate into a productized service, a product for our customers. And a demo application to show those capabilities is there as well. So that's all I want to say just now. Please do come and talk to us at our stand on W16. Any information, you can contact us via the emails there, or talk to Nick about the more technical aspects of it. But that's all we have to say now. Any questions, please feel free to throw them up. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. Well, we have got a packed out audience here today, and we've got just under 10 minutes left of the session. So does anybody have any questions that they'd like to throw at our fabulous speakers today? If you do, pop your hand up. We've got a roving mic that you can use. Any questions? Anyone want to throw their hand up in the air like they just don't care? All right, well, I have a question. I'm going to throw my hand up in the air like I don't care. AI is a really divisive topic. You've got many people that are really excited about the uses of it. You've got many people that are really nervous and uncomfortable about the uses of it. What would you say to those organizations that sit in the latter category there, the ones that are slightly nervous about this?
Well, first of all, I may say that that last slide I showed about the idea of the ethics around AI, we've, in our closed beta and the work we've done, it's very much been done with the control placed at the creator side. Absolutely, people are very nervous. I myself, AI just frightens me completely. But the process there is very much designed to give you the access to the tools, but it's also ultimately sort of checked and validated by the user themselves. So the control is still back with the curatorial team. Nick, do you have anything more to say about the...
I think it's a good question. And I think, as with any new technology, there's potential to do harm and good. As Malcolm has said, being attentive to the ethics and kind of the first principles of what we're doing is very important. And I think that, like I say, this technology will be adopted in the coming years and decades. And so it's important to use it to help solve the problems that it will also cause. And I think that's what we're trying to do here.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that using it in the practical way that you demonstrated to do is incredibly powerful. Any questions in the audience? We have one at the back there. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you very much for the talk. And I like the message that you are putting curator in control. So my question is, you are using Wikidata as like the kind of trustworthy central reference. Is your tool capable of linking other, like say, heritage database like the British Museum and other more curated database?
That's a great question. So at the moment, the tools that we've built just link to Wikidata. But we're aware that there are lots of domain-specific knowledge bases like the British Museum. There are other international knowledge bases. And so a longer term aim with these tools is to link to an arbitrary knowledge base. So that's a good question.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our speakers today? Yep, we've got one at the front. Thank you.
I just wondered if you were doing any work around photographs or artifacts, just whether you can categorize artifacts from using AI in any useful sense.
Also a great question. That's definitely one of the areas that we're looking at expanding into. We're conscious that there's a lot of value to be gained from using AI to automatically extract metadata from images or to do some kind of multimodal search of the kind that you might have seen on Google Photos or something like that, where you use keywords to search your image databases. So that is absolutely something that we're looking at. And there has been talk internally about doing proofs of value for that. So it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's very much a natural evolution process. Everything we do generally, as all software suppliers do, is you start at one point and you build and evolve as the requirements are seen and come out. Absolutely. When we started this project, people said, that's great, but what about image recognition? It's a natural next step. But I think from this point, the key thing for here was the understanding the extent of the collection's data, trying to enhance that to bring more content to your end users in a clear, controlled way. So that was the first focus of the project, entity recognition. There's obviously the next step, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, one more question.
Hello, I work with collections at the moment, and I would like to ask which kind of skills would you suggest people working in collections to develop to be able to work effectively with these tools?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer it. I mean, I think that with these tools specifically, we're trying to design them in ways that they integrate seamlessly with the work of collections managers. And the aim, as Malcolm was saying, is to integrate this into Axiell's products in a way that doesn't require substantial upskilling. Yeah, I mean, I think that these tools are trying to make life easier for curators rather than requiring them to learn new things necessarily.
Yes, to follow that up, I think some of the slides that Nick had there showed the manual process you would follow if you tried to do this yourselves. And it's very much a close contained practice that with curators, archivists understand and recognize. You still have the control over what you choose to identify and say, I'm going to work with this part of the collection. The system then is all the technical stuff behind the scenes, and it's back to you to validate and approve. So it's almost like a speeded up process of work that we're used to doing anyway. But yeah.
We have another question at the back. We've just got a few more minutes left.
Forgive me if I'm asking something you've kind of already said, but what is the next step and what is the time frame of that next step for you?
Purely in terms of what we showed just now, our next step is to take the work we've done in the beta and extend that into a practical application within our product. So taking this work and making it productized. So rather than just a controlled beta with a number of customers, the features there for people to use. How it looks in the end interface, I don't know yet. That's work that my product people are doing. There's a demo application we're creating to demonstrate this process, which obviously for those who are using Axiell collection systems, then we can see that. But the next step really is to take the theoretical work, the visible progress we've made in the beta, and apply that in a product that customers can use. I mean, as Nick said, it's you can't avoid this process. You know, the AI is there. We have to harness it and use it as best possible in a way that works best for our collections users. So it's about productizing it in a way that, as this person said, it's easy to use, doesn't involve too much hard work, but it's productizing it is the next step.
We have 2 minutes left. Any further quick questions? One at the back there. Three. Listen, we'll do one. Lady at the back had her hand up first, and then there'll be plenty of opportunity to go and visit these guys on the stands. I'll give you their stand number.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, so when can we buy it effectively?
I don't have the answer to that question. I would imagine that what I would say for our Axiell customers, we have our online Digital Days conference in June. It's 2 days of online conference. There'll be a lot of talk about AI as part of that. And hopefully that will start to give more information on when these things will appear as part of a product. But yeah, I can't say right now, but it's at the top of our agenda. So join Digital Days next month and see what happens.
Oh, I'm so sorry we're out of time, but these guys are around. I'm sure you've got more questions for them. Anyone that didn't get the opportunity, they're on stand W16, which is just down here to my right, that way. So please do go and visit them. Before you leave, please leave your green boxes on the seat. Take your earpieces with you. But please give a round of applause to our wonderful speakers today, Malcolm and Nikita. Thank you.